What's up and welcome back to the opening line, kicking the week off on a Tuesday after I almost had to relocate to Northern Ohio, stranded in Canton, and then yesterday's trip back into New York City didn't get much better as it was pretty interesting. I found myself in Allentown, Pennsylvania for a few hours yesterday, Benny, and I was not expecting to be there. So I really caught the full gamut of the flatlands this weekend.
Yeah, you took a tour of the Rust Belt, man, because that's always so much fun to do. And, I'm glad you're back in town. No, I heard you say it last night. My wife actually said the same thing. She drove home Sunday night from the beach to go back up to North Jersey, and she got hit by, I guess, the same rain that kept you in Ohio because she said the rain was horrible. There was like hail while she was driving home, and ended up closing all the airports in New York City in the area. So I kind of figured it was going to be a little rough for you getting back into town. So I'm glad you finally made it.
I made it Sunday. Well, Sunday was a no-go. Ended up having to stay in Canton, Ohio, and leave the airport, come back to the hotel. You know what I'm saying? Got out. I was actually able to cop some weed. You know what I'm saying?
Nice. I mean, you're in the middle of a whole bunch of farmland. Somebody's got to be growing something good out there.
Exactly. So you know what I'm saying? The experience at the NFL Hall of Fame was great. It was real dope, you know what I'm saying? You get to see all the busts and stuff like that and all the exhibits and, all the stuff they're doing to expand the Hall of Fame. Pretty cool to get on John Madden's original cruiser, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, that is pretty cool.
Benny, I was talking with some people. It's a generation of football fans that know John Madden as the guy from Madden.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I'm looking now.
They don't know him as the broadcaster and as the former coach. They know him as the dude from the video game.
Yeah, it's funny because I buy the game every year. Like I either download it or I actually go to the store and buy it every year. And a bunch of my son's friends are starting to get into Madden now because he's 10 years old, going to be 11. And a lot of his friends, like fifth grade or so, they play a lot of video games and a lot of them are getting into sports. And Madden is one of the ones that they're getting into. I was just thinking about that right now. Like, if I asked my son who John Madden was, his response wouldn't be the Raiders coach or the guy from Monday Night Football like yours or my response would be. His response would be the guy from the video game, the football video game we play. Like, that would have been his way of saying who Madden was. So that's interesting.
And how old is your son?
He's 10 right now.
My 18-year-old son would not know him as the guy from the Oakland Raiders or the broadcaster. My 18-year-old son would know him as the guy from the video game. So that's what John Madden is now. But that was definitely a cool experience. But obviously we went out there for a reason, not just to drink the $5 pitchers at Buffalo Wild Wings. That's right, Benny, $5 pitchers. So
I went to law school in Northern Ohio. I know.
So your boy was on tilt.
Yeah. It's funny, Corey, because like living in the New York City area, you just assume everything is just as expensive everywhere else. When you get like more than 25 miles, 30 miles outside of New York City, prices drop in half. When you get like 100 miles out, it drops by like a quarter. Like if you made the money you lived in New York City and lived in, basically anywhere 100 miles outside of New York City, you were rich. Like you were like super rich.
No doubt. You definitely, the savings was like, Benny, I was going to places and I was looking at receipts like, wait a minute, did y'all not? All right, you know what I'm saying?
Like we had 5 pitchers, right? You guys realize that? Like this is the first round. This is the bill for the first round, right? And it's like, no, that's for everything, man. It's
all right, so I was like, hey, if you like it, I love it. Now, the auction though, those prices were a little bit higher than I expected to be. So I guess that's where they got me. Benny, I have my auction team up for you. I want to get some of your thoughts on it. I want to start with the quarterback position. I did it once again. Tried the pricing force on quarterback and got caught with 2. Hopefully it's not too much of a headache. I don't mind it too much because I got a definite floor in the $3 Russell Wilson, but my quarterback is a $6 Lamar Jackson.
Yeah,
Mind you, this is a 14-team PPR. This is a 14-team league. In a 14-team auction, you have $400 extra in the room. Let me preface this before I start. With that $400 extra in the room, it's kind of difficult to know which kind of way that money is going to spend. Hold on, let me see what it's calling me. Go ahead, baby.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I'm looking at here from this auction draft that you were just in with the quarterback position at least, the most expensive quarterback, unless I'm reading this wrong, the most expensive quarterback I see, Pat Mahomes only costs $14.
Yeah, that was kind of a steal, Mahomes at 14.
Yeah, I'm looking at Mahomes at 14 and thinking to myself, like, man, I would have been all over that compared to, like to me, that's not much of a premium to pay for.
Kyler Murray went for 10.
Yeah, I don't get that at all. I mean, like Drew Brees was 2, Carson Wentz is 4, Lamar Jackson 6. Like, you're basically getting quarterbacks for the price of a pitcher of beer at Buffalo Wild Wings. That's crazy right there to me. But I mean, at a $14 Pat Mahomes, when these other quarterbacks are going for $4 and $5, like to me, that seems like a really good place to have spent and to get some kind of advantage at the quarterback position. Because I think everybody agrees. I don't even think there's really any argument. The consensus number one quarterback in fantasy football this year is Pat Mahomes, So when you're getting the consensus number one guy at a position for, really only like, would you say you started with $200 each in the draft?
Right? $20 budget.
Yeah, I mean, you're paying just 5% of your cap more to get Pat Mahomes than you are to get literally all these other quarterbacks, $4, $2, $6. I mean, the other quarterbacks are going for, but like, what'd you get Russell Wilson for? Wasn't Russell Wilson like $3 or something like that?
Russell Wilson was $3.
Yeah, I mean, paying up for Pat Mahomes there, it seems like a pretty good deal because you're getting an advantage at a position and you're doing it without having to spend a big portion of your budget. But that's surprising to me, like how cheap all these guys were.
The quarterbacks, what the thing about it is, Benny, and you have a predetermined notion that you're not going to pay for the top quarterback. Pat Mahomes was the first player thrown out. The very first nomination of the draft was Pat Mahomes. Now, I went into this thinking I was going to let the values come to me. I was going to see what the board shook out. So We start with the big backs. The big backs all go for over 60. So I was like, okay, this is kind of commonplace. This is what I thought it was going to be.
Right.
What found interesting, Benny, was the second tier backs. The prices on these guys got up pretty high too. David Johnson for 45. You know what I'm saying? Is one that
James Conner 39, Dalvin Cook 42. What else are we looking at here?
Left
I'm scrolling through. I thought Mixon was 40. Kerryon Johnson 39.
Kerryon Johnson at 39 seemed high to me. Le'Veon Bell goes for 53. You know what I'm saying? I guess look at it now. You get a discount on Zeke with him only going for 50. Todd Gurley goes for 37, which could be some people could say is an interesting price also. Like you said, Connor, but all the big backs go for in the 60s. I expected Benny that second tier backs to come down a little bit cheaper than that, but they didn't.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at some of them now. Like even the Marlon Mack at 27, Devontae Freeman 33, Mark Ingram 27. David Montgomery, 26. I mean, these are guys that are, in a snake draft, they're going like 4th, 5th round, 3rd round, some of the guys that we mentioned there. But, 3rd, 4th, 5th round for some of those guys, you're still paying basically over 50% of what the top backs are bringing in. That's not cheap.
No, it's not. And I thought, and that's where that $400 extra in the room, that's where that comes into play.
True.
Only in these things, if you're the guy that sits back, you know what I mean? You're like, okay, well, I'll sit back and let the values fall. Problem is, when you got guys like Mike Clay and you got like some of these other cats, they're thinking the same thing. So now you're getting into bidding wars for players that you're like, oh man, so I wasn't expecting on playing this price for this player. You know what I'm saying? And you get into a bidding war because you got 3 or 4 cats in the room that's holding money looking for the values.
Well, the thing is with the 14-teamer too, which is tough. Like a lot of these auction drafts are 12-teamers.
12 teams, yeah.
With the 14-teamers, I mean, the guys who are taking the $60 running backs, like that's where they're spending. But the problem is the other 8 to 9, 10 people that didn't get one of those big-time running backs, now you're all fighting for those second-tier guys, which is why the price has to go up. Because if you walk away without getting, one of those guys, I mean, then you're left like, rolling the dice with, Darius Geis and, Jalen Samuels and stuff like that. And you're not going to win a league against people that got, the $60 running backs when that's the best you could throw out against them.
And that's kind of the situation I was in, Benny. I tell you how my running back shook out. I paid 18 for Sony Michel, which I didn't want to go that high. I paid 21 for Miles Sanders, which I didn't want to go that high.
I don't mind that, though. 21 for Sanders, I don't think it's crazy.
And I paid 24 for Tevin Coleman, once again, I didn't want to go that high, but this is what a 14-team league will do to you. And you know what I'm saying, Benny? You know, I'm getting in the bidding wars for these backs now when, you know, I believe in the flex draft, I think I got Sony Michel for like 11. You know what I'm saying? Goes 18. What do you think of that running back trio right there that I'm kind of going to have to rely on?
I like the Tevin Coleman and Miles Sanders picks a lot. The Sony Michel pick, like I said, I'm not as high on him this year, and it really has more to do with just like I don't trust him to be healthy. But again, for $18, like what you tried to do in this draft, you know, you spent up a little bit at the wide receiver position in order to kind of save money to be able to, you know, like you saved money at the running back position in order to be able to spend up at the wide receiver position. And I like, you know, the receivers that you walked away with, you know, Tyreek Hill, Adam Thielen. You know, I think you got A.J. Green for a pretty decent price there, even though he's going to be out for a few weeks. You got guys like Calvin Ridley and Miles Boykin, you know, to kind of go there. So you built a strong wide receiver core, so you had to go a little bit cheaper at running back. With the money that you spent, I don't mind the running backs that you got because Miles Sanders has a lot of upside, and you know I'm really high on Tevin Coleman this year. For me, Sony Michel is the biggest question mark of those three. Yeah,
and I would agree with you on that. And I didn't want to pay that price, but I'm looking to get into that Patriot backfield and those touchdowns. That's what you're hoping for, and that when the season starts, he can deliver on that. As far as the wide receivers go, once again, you know, obviously my love for Odell Beckham this year, and I really don't have him in any big leagues yet. I only got one to go, so you know, if you're in that league with me, there goes a hint. Julio Jones, 53. Julio Jones, 53. I'm trying to find the prices now, Benny.
Yeah, Michael Thomas, 44.
Michael Thomas at 44 was excellent. Now looking back, you know what I'm saying? Michael Thomas at 44 is excellent.
Yeah, I don't think that's a horrible price that somebody got him for. I can't even find some of these big receivers looking through this thing.
Juju Smith-Schuster went for 55.
How high are you on Juju this year?
I like Juju. I was in on the Juju bidding. I got up to about 51. I had to tap out right then. I'm trying to find Odell Beckham.
Hopkins, I got Hopkins here was 52. I'm looking at Devontae Adams, 46. I think that's a pretty good price. I don't see Odell Beckham on this list either. Did Odell Beckham go undrafted? That can't possibly be.
Well, no, he didn't go undrafted because I was in on the bidding for Odell Beckham. But I believe, Benny, the highest wide receiver may have been Smith-Schuster.
That's what I'm saying. Like 55 for Smith-Schuster seems a little bit excessive in my opinion, to be honest with you.
Odell Beckham went for 53. Yeah. So basically what happened was Smith-Schuster was the last of the tier, Benny. That's what it was.
Okay. So, I mean,
So like after Julio went for 53, you know, it's like Odell, Julio came off the board, and I'm looking like, okay, well now it's only one big wide receiver left.
Right.
And that wide receiver was Smith-Schuster. And I'm like, I don't want to go past 50. I took it to 51. He goes for 55, highest priced wide receiver because he was the last of the tier.
Right.
You know, I think he'll bring close to that back, Benny. I think I got a real good wide receiver value, though, with a $40 Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, I mean, Tyreek Hill has been slipping into the back end of the first round, beginning of the second round in PPR drafts. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you would expect him to be priced there along with guys like, you know, I mean, again, Michael –
$15 less than Smith-Schuster.
Yeah, that seems like – that's why I just think the Smith-Schuster price was way too overpriced. Like, I'm looking at Devontae Adams at 46 and Mike Thomas at 44. And thinking to myself, like, those are really solid values for guys that I probably would have wanted. Like, I don't think I would have won 53 for Julio. I definitely would not have gone 55 for Smith-Schuster. You know, I've heard a lot of people start talking about this. Like, you know, Rob, our CEO, MLB model, again, though, I think he's also a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, so that might have something to do with it.
Yes, it does.
Super high on Juju this year. Like, he thinks Juju is going to basically do what he did last year, plus take a bunch of the Antonio Brown targets as well, which, I mean, if that does turn out to be the case, I see where he's going, but I don't know. I just don't see Schuster getting like 12 to 15 targets a game, which is what I feel like some people are kind of thinking he's going to, you know?
It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. You know what that offense can do. It's been very good to wide receivers. He is the main piece of the pie right now. So I think he has a big season. Like I said, I think that price was inflated because he was the end of the tier. Yet and still, I had set a price and I wasn't really going past that. Now, so Adam Thielen I got for 31. You're always going to get those Vikings wide receivers for cheap because, for cheaper, well, they're always going to be good values. The reason why I have a $16 AJ Green, Benny, is because, and I'll tell this to anybody, if you're in a league and read your rules, if you have an injured reserve spot, throw AJ Green in that spot. You know what I'm saying, Benny? So this league has an injured reserve spot. I got me a $16 AJ Green. It could be week 5, week 6. I could have AJ Green in this starting lineup.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all because you basically got what should be a $40 receiver for less than half the cost that he should be. And again, if you can get through the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season and then you add him into what you have already, it's just going to be golden. And the thing that a lot of people need to remember too is the bye weeks don't usually start the first week of the season. So the first couple weeks, if you're missing a guy, you usually have enough guys to cover it. Where you really start getting into the bye weeks, after the first month of the season or so, when teams start and go on byes, that's when you really have to worry about what kind of depth you have. So even a guy like Golden Tate this year, who's going to miss the first 4 games of the season, it's all right, so what? You're probably going to be able to weather the storm through that. And then you have him for the last, 10 or 11 games of the season right there. And the thing is, if Golden Tate wasn't hurt right now, he would be a guy probably going around pick 80, pick 90 in snake drafts. Instead, you're getting him at pick 130, 140. That's an extra 4 or 5 rounds value. You look around at what he's going to give you per game on average versus the guys that you're drafting in that position and what they're going to give you per game on average, and it's not even close. So I never have a problem with you doing that, especially like you said, if it's not going to take up a bench spot that you have and it's, you can put him on injured reserve or you could stash him or something like that.
The picks, the purchases, Benny, the ones that made me feel not as good, but I kind of felt like I had to do it. I spent $48 between Calvin Ridley and Tevin Coleman.
I don't mind the Tevin Coleman 24 at all. The Calvin Ridley 24 I don't think is bad either. I mean, Calvin Ridley right now is going – I want to say he's going in the 60s or 70s ADP-wise. I could be wrong on that. I might have to double-check. But that would be basically a 5th or 6th round pick. So he's going right behind – a lot of the other guys that we started talking about already, the Adam Thielens and all of that. So you got him for basically 75% of Thielen's value for a guy that's usually going about a round or 2 later, which is about what you should be paying, right? I mean, you figure a 10 to 15% drop per round.
I got used to that $5 bears, you know what I'm saying, those $5 pitches. So I thought everything out there was going to be cheaper. And when I was doing the pro draft interview with Canton Ohio, I said to them the same thing, and they both were like, no, that's about the right price right there, especially when you put those 13th and the 14th team in there. That's what it's going to go for. Looking at some of the tight end prices, Benny, Eric Ebron went for 6. Evan Ingram went for 18. And I was like, that seemed like a little bit high to me. What do you think about that, Evan Ingram at 18?
Let me get a feel for the top. What was Kelsey at?
Kelsey went for 35, right?
All right, so Ingram's 50% of Kelsey. How about Kittle and Ertz?
All right. Kittle went for 25.
Okay.
And let me find your man Zach Ertz. Of course, now I'm going to have a hard time finding Zach Ertz.
Well, I mean, either way, while you're looking, basically when you look at Evan Ingram, a lot of people, including myself, have him as the number 4 overall tight end this year.
Yep.
I have him right behind those 3 guys mentioned there. Ahead of guys like O.J. Howard and Njoku and Ebron and Hunter Henry. That's basically the tier, that second tier behind him there. To me, Evan Ingram's at the top of tier 2 after, the top 3 that everybody's drafting. And again, not really a huge fan of Zach Ertz, so you're not going to see a lot of him.
Zach Ertz went for 21.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you're going down the list then, I don't think 18 for Evan Ingram is that bad. Because to me, Ingram is the next best guy that I would want after Zach Ertz, and I would think that he's probably going to be a couple dollars cheaper than Zach Ertz, which is it. Listen, Corey, here's the thing that I want people to look at. I actually did. We have those position battles going on over at Fantasy right now. So if you guys want, this is one of my favorite things that's going on right now over at Fantasy Guru, which is, more of our season-long leading site for NFL draft stuff. We're doing these things called position battles where one of us in the company takes one guy and somebody takes the other guy. So Tyler and I he took O.J. Howard, I took Evan Ingram. So we did the back and forth.
Tyler loves O.J. Howard.
I know. But believe me, I read his article. I know all about it. But when we started doing the write-ups for him and all, and I did a deep dive into Evan Ingram to be able to write up my argument for why Ingram should be taken ahead of O.J. Howard. Look at the last 4 games of last season. After Odell Beckham wound up going on a DL and not playing anymore, you were looking at a guy in Evan Ingram.
It's called the IR.
IR, whatever. I got too many sports going on in my head right now.
I feel you.
Yeah. So anyway, after Beckham was out, you were looking at a guy in Evan Ingram that basically averaged about 8 targets a game, 5 catches a game, like 60, 70 yards a game, and was finding the end zone a couple times as well.
And that big game down the stretch versus Dallas.
Yeah, so, you're talking 5 for 75 was like his average there. That's 12.5 fantasy points in a PPR. That's 10 fantasy points in a straight-up league. And that's not even including the touchdowns. That's not even including touchdown scoring. That's what Evan Ingram should be in this offense this year because, you're basically looking at the Giants' offense, and it's the Giants minus Odell Beckham. So you look at the 4 games they played at the end of last season without Odell Beckham, and you say, all right, well, who benefited the most? The guy who benefited the most was Evan Ingram.
And if you even go back to the previous year when Odell got hurt, Evan Ingram once again was the guy who benefited the most. So, you know what I'm saying? Like I said, maybe I'm just looking for too good of a bargain. O.J. Howard goes for 14.
Which I don't mind either because I honestly think O.J. Howard, and I was on the fence until Tyler and I did the argument. And when I read his piece on O.J. Howard, I was like, yeah, you know what? O.J. Howard is probably better than I've been giving him credit for. So I don't even mind O.J. Howard being a couple bucks behind Ingram. I still prefer Ingram, who's the guy I took in the argument, but I do think it's a lot closer.
Jared Cook went for 14.
What do you think of Jared Cook? Hold on, I want to stop right here right now because this is a guy that I'm really on the fence about. Like some people are talking about like, oh, man, he looks like he's going to have a big year right now. And I liked him last year in Oakland. Like I had a lot of shares of him. I talked him up before one of the first games. And he put up a monster number. I think that either Oakland played on like Sunday or Monday night because they weren't on the main slate, but they were on one of the little slates. And I had the write-up for the Sunday, Monday slate or the Monday, Thursday slate or something. And he won everybody a lot of money because I was like, yo, he's my favorite tight end on the slate by far. And he had one of his like 10-catch games. And then he also had a bunch of games where he kind of disappeared in that offense. But I think that had more to do with the offense than anything else.
Oh, you must not know, Benny. I don't fuck with Jared Cook.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. Is this like is there a story behind this or is this just like a personal beef?
It's a ton of stories behind it, Benny.
Okay.
I've had some of my – I think my rant that got the most views ever was on Jared Cook. I call him Bigfoot because we always hear about the talent, but we never see it. Jared Cook has been disappointing me for years, Benny, to the point where I've sworn him off. Jared Cook is
so Jared Cook's like my kids. He's been disappointing me for years.
I've sworn him off, Benny, and it's kind of just like it's when the thing with Jared Cook is when you need him the most, when it's week 15 and he has that matchup, and you're like, wow, this is a great matchup. You know what I'm saying? That's when he gives you that zero. Jared Cook has given me zeros in big weeks before, and so it's just like I don't put it like this. I don't give analysis on Jared Cook because it's too biased. I just know that he's somebody that's never going to be on any.
So like with me, he's like my Anthony Davis. So he's like your Anthony Davis, basically. It's like I just shut my mouth when it comes to Anthony Davis talk because I just can't do it. Like Anthony Davis has screwed me too many times for me to be objective.
He's burnt me too much. I can't give you advice on Jared Cook. One interesting thing though, Vance McDonald, Benny, went for $12. And I'm like, wow, the Vance McDonald love is really and that was your man. He was serious about it. What's your man from Roto World? Doherty? I think his name was Pat Doherty. Your microphone, Benny.
Oh yeah. I gotta be honest, I am a huge Vance McDonald fan, and I'll make the case for you right now of why.
Yeah, Pat Doherty.
Yeah, I'll make the case of why people should be higher on Vance McDonald. Basically, for the last –
would you pay $12 for him?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I would. So here's the deal, Corey. Basically, he was a 50-50 player last year. And for the last couple years with Jesse James. Like, the two of them basically split snaps. Now you're talking about him getting 75 or 80% of the snaps. Like, I think they still have another tight end. It might be like Xavier Grimble or something like that.
Yeah.
He's going to be Vance McDonald is now like the every down tight end or the most down tight end. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to be on the field most of the time as opposed to just the 50-50 player that he's been. He was a productive guy playing like 55, 60% of snaps. Now you're going to give him 75, 80% of snaps. So you take what he was as a productive, back-end tight end 1, top-end tight end 2. You could push him all the way up in the tight end rankings to probably like top 6 or 7 this year. And there's going to be a lot of upside. And then on top of that, you lost all those Antonio Brown targets. All those Antonio Brown targets are not going to end up in the hands of, Dante Moncrief and James Washington. It's going to kind of get spread out where I think everybody's going to kind of benefit from Antonio Brown not being there with a few more targets. So you give all the Jesse James targets to Vance McDonald and you give him some of the Antonio Brown targets. This could be a guy who sees 7 or 8 targets a game at the tight end position, which, again, if you get 7 or 8 targets a game, you're talking about 120 targets over the season, which puts you as one of the top 5 most targeted tight ends in the league, puts you on pace for 80 to 90 catches, 1,000 yards, and a couple touchdowns. And, I mean, Vance McDonald is a load. He's a big dude. So they can use him in the red zone. I mean, we all remember the stiff arm play from last year where he caught like a 5-yard pass, stiff armed the DB, dropped him and then took it to the house. He's a pretty athletic guy as well. So I think he's in for a very big year, and I think he's doing it at a lower ADP than he should be.
Switching over to quarterbacks right quick. Told you about that $14 Pat Mahomes buy. Deshaun Watson goes for 13. Baker Mayfield, Benny, goes for 11. Baker Mayfield love is starting to explode. And being in Northeast Ohio this past weekend, that's Baker Mayfield town right there, son. Everybody's feeling dangerous. He is Baker's. I've seen him go as high as the second quarterback off the board, Benny. Where you at on Baker?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it too. I don't want to say I think he's being overdrafted because I don't. I think he's being drafted right around where he should be. Like, I don't think there's value there, but I don't think you're an idiot for being one of the people who takes him there or for paying $11 for him. I mean, so he was basically what, the 3rd most expensive quarterback behind Mahomes at 14 and Watson at 13?
Yes, he was. Aaron Rodgers came in at 10.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's crazy. Like, those 4 that you just mentioned, Matt, Ryan, are probably the top 5 that most people have been drafting in a lot of the drafts that I see. Again, I'm a guy who usually waits on quarterback. I mean, you got Russell Wilson for $3. To me, that's you can't ask for much better than that. That's a friggin' steal. But if you are paying up for one of the top guys, Baker does project to be one of the top 5 or 6 quarterbacks in the league this year.
All right, moving over to the snake draft. We also did a snake draft. Now, after the auction got finished, Benny, our itinerary was start the auction at 10.
Right.
Break for 1 at lunch. You know what I'm saying? We come back through the snake draft at 2. Well, I got through the auction at 12:45, and I was like, I'm not even tripping off of lunch. You know what I'm saying? I'll eat a burger while I'm doing the draft. I'm going to go check out the Hall of Fame. And this is when I started the tour from the beginning and walked through the entire Hall of Fame. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I saw some of your Instagram story where you had some of the stuff up there. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was dope. It was dope experience. You know what I'm saying? Going through the Hall of Fame with the bus and all of that stuff. You know what I'm saying? Now, here's the dope part right here, though. As I was getting towards the end of it, it's about 1:45. So, okay, I got 15 minutes. You know what I'm saying? To get back. So, as we come through the Super Bowl room, like the last room is like. The last room was like the rings and the Vince Lombardi trophy. And then, you go outside for the Madden Cruiser and all of that. And that's kind of it. Well, as I am going through, I guess Dave Richard, the homie from CBS, he asked if the draft could start a little earlier because he was driving to Pittsburgh for the Chiefs and Steelers preseason game. So everybody was back in the room except for me. So I hear on the loudspeaker, Corey Parson, can you please report to the gold jacket room? And I was like, my name is on the loudspeaker at the NFL Hall of Fame. Benny, I made it.
The fantasy exec, famous around the world right now, baby. I love it. That's what I like to hear.
We go in there. Now, what we did for this was we did this KDS style, Kentucky Derby style. You pick a card, and then you don't get the draft pick where you pick the card.
Yeah, I love the Kentucky Derby. For people who don't know, this is the best way to do it for a draft.
Yes, yeah, so more or less, I picked. It was 14 of us. We had the cards. I was able to pick. I was able to be the fourth person to pick where I would draft, which was perfect for me because I'm going to pick the fourth pick because I already know who I'm going to get it for. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that worked out exactly the way I thought it would be. I take the fourth pick, and I take Ezekiel Elliott with pick number 4.
Yeah, so for people who don't know about the Kentucky Derby style, basically this happened a couple years ago. The Kentucky Derby switched over. Instead of like pulling numbers out of a hat to see where you're going to pick in the draft, they pick numbers out of a hat, and then you get to pick because some horses wanted to be on the inside, some trainers wanted their horses on the outside. So you got to pick where you wanted to be. So for a fantasy draft, you pick the numbers out. So like Corey said, Corey got number 4. That doesn't mean he has the 4th pick, though. That means he has the 4th pick of where he wants to draft because some people like to be at number 1. Some people want to be at the back end, so you get like the 10 and then the 14 on the way around or something like that. So you get to pick which one of the spots in the draft. Like, I want to be 1st pick. I want to be 7th pick. I want to be 8th pick. So I actually really like that for fantasy drafts because sometimes, especially this year, Corey, a lot of people have been saying, like, if you don't get one of the top 4 or 5 picks to get one of those running backs, you're better off picking 10, 11, or 12 than you are picking, like,
in the middle. I agree with you. The middle
draft from there, yeah.
The middle seems to be a trouble area this year.
Yeah,
a trouble area, but I think you got to think a little bit more when you're putting your teams together. So I get my first share of Ezekiel Elliott for the season, and it's just it is what it is. So I'm going through the snake draft right now, Benny, and what I find interesting about this, the guy who's rising up the draft board the most in the past 7 days is Kerryon Johnson. Kerryon Johnson is locked into the 2nd round now. And listen, I'm a Kerryon guy. I talked about Kerryon all last year. I love his talent. You know what I'm saying? He's played in big games. The kid can play. You know what I'm saying? I worry about that upright running style. That's why I like him I like him in that 3rd more than that 2nd. But he's in the 2nd now, Benny. And especially in the 14-team league, he's definitely in the 2nd.
I mean, when the Theo Riddick thing first happened, we were still able to get him kind of in the 3rd, and I got a couple shares of him there. But you saw him moving up slowly. Every one of those drafts, he started moving up slowly, and you saw it kind of happening. I feel like in the 2nd round, there's not a lot of value left with him. You know what I mean?
He has to hit.
Yeah, and I feel like he's a guy now where there's more risk than there is reward. Because if he doesn't hit and you took him in the 2nd, having a big hole with him in the 2nd round on your team, it's not going to look good for you.
Another player, if people go up the board, people go down the board. Zach Ertz is dropping down the board now.
As he should.
People are starting to figure it out that what Ertz did last year, he's probably not going to be able to pull off again this year. But my 2nd pick, Benny, I took Damien Williams. I didn't feel great about that. You know what I'm saying? Because we obviously know it's going to be a timeshare there. But I'm like, I'm getting a piece of the Kansas City Chiefs offense at RB13.
See, I think people are kind of overreacting a little bit to this. The news that I'm hearing is that Carlos Hyde might not even make the roster.
Okay.
And if Carlos Hyde –
I feel like he's on a roster bubble with every team he goes to.
That is true. But here's the thing. Like, really, who are you worried about behind Damien Williams? Like they said, running back by committee, that's great. But there are different types of running backs by committee, right? There's running backs by committee where one guy still sees 75% of the work. There are running backs by committee that are straight 50-50 splits. I still think at least, and I'm saying at a minimum, I think 2/3 of the carries are still going, or 2/3 of the touches, not even the carries, the passing too. 2/3 of the touches are still going to Damien Williams. 2/3 of the touches in the Chiefs offense is equivalent to 80% of the touches in some of these slower paced offenses.
No doubt about that.
I really don't think it's that big a deal. Like Damien Williams to me is a guy that I'm starting to steal, in my opinion, in the back of the second round, the beginning of the third round, because people are a little down on him after that RBBC comment by Andy Reid.
Now, I start in the 14. In my thinking, is a 14-team league. I start with Ezekiel Elliott and Damien Williams. I'm like, we should be good to go after that.
I'm fine with that.
Come back in round 3. I had to do it. My guy was right there, T.Y. Hilton. I know that Hilton is dropping in a lot of drafts. Amari Cooper was interesting to me here, but I didn't want to have Ezekiel Elliott, Damien Williams, and Amari Cooper. You know what I'm saying? At some point,
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of – I know you're a Dallas fan, but that's a lot of relying on one offense. I mean,
exactly. You know what I'm saying?
Especially not like a super fast-paced offense. Although I got to say, those are two incredibly high-volume guys in that offense. So what do you think about the T.Y.? Let me ask you, are you worried about the Andrew Luck? Because we talked about the Andrew Luck situation where Andrew Luck might not even start week 1 at this point in time. Are you worried about how much that's going to affect T.Y.? Because, I mean, you mentioned it. Like when Jacoby Brissett was the quarterback a couple years ago, it wasn't exactly the banner year for T.Y. Hilton.
No, but the thing about it is, Benny, the offensive line was terrible that year. The offensive line now
very true.
It's one of the best in the NFL.
Very true.
Brissett can play. Brissett's one of the better backup quarterbacks in the league. I still want Hilton at a discount. You know what I'm saying? But this room right here is kind of too smart to give him to you at a discount. So I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'll take him right here in the third round as my WR1. Like I said, I didn't want to have Cooper there. And then I already own a ton of Thielen and Diggs. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, let me go ahead and scoop up my man T.Y. Hilton right here. 12th wide receiver off the board. T.Y. Hilton, Benny. So it's Elliott, Damien Williams, and T.Y. Hilton to start. 14-team league. So far, I feel okay. Like I said, I want Hilton at a discount, but I'm not taking him off my board.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. Like I'm trying to hope that it drops a little bit.
Exactly.
Put it this way: if T.Y. Hilton is there in the 4th round and you don't take him, you're a moron. But if you can get him in the 3rd round or the back of the 3rd round, I think that's a round where he should be going.
So after that, you come around and you see the usual suspects. Nothing really interesting. David Montgomery jumped into the 3rd round. I found that interesting.
I think that has more to do with just 14 teams and not enough running backs, though. Like you also have to understand when you're looking at draft boards too and trying to figure out how to do things yourself. If you're in a 14-team draft, there are more, obviously there are more people, so there are more positions that need to get filled. So guys that you think of as like running back 3s are now really running back 2s because now we need 28 running backs to start every week. And if you're using a flex, that could be as many as 42 running backs starting in a week. There aren't that many teams in the league. So you're going to be looking at guys that are even like 3rd down backs as like viable flex kind of running backs right now.
What happened in the crib?
I don't know. I just heard it sounded like somebody's building something with some kind of blocks or something like that, and it all just fell over. So we'll see.
My wide receiver 2, I get him in round 4, Benny, is Allen Robinson. I have so much Tyler Boyd. I didn't want to take Tyler Boyd right there. I had just bought Calvin Ridley in the auction. I don't have no shares of Allen Robinson. And I'm like, you know what? He could be a bounce-back season. He did finish strong last year. I just don't know what Mitchell Trubisky is. Me and my brother-in-law was having a conversation about Mitchell Trubisky last night. He likes him. I'm not as high on him. What do you think about Trubisky?
I like him for fantasy because he uses his legs. I like him for fantasy more than I like him as a real-life quarterback, although the news coming out of camp is that he looks pretty good and has really made a step forward, which, again, he's still a young guy. He was only drafted a couple years ago, so he does still have the opportunity to improve and step forward. Again, the fact that he has the legs is so big for fantasy. I mean, that's why we talk about guys like Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, and we don't really mention Mitchell Trubisky. I had him last year in the Scott Fish Bowl because I waited as long as I could to kind of take my quarterbacks, and he was one of the guys I got. He performed pretty damn well for me last year. As for the Allen Robinson pick, though, I mean, we had a whole discussion about Allen Robinson last week. So for any of you guys out there that want to hear, we both feel like Allen Robinson is in for a little bit of a breakout season this year. So if you want, remember, all these videos are available on YouTube. So just go and subscribe to the channel, and you can go back to basically, we've been talking football for about a month straight right now here. So, some of the newer ones have a lot more updated information as things became available. But, there's some nuggets in there that we've dropped in the past couple of weeks that'll help you if you haven't had your draft already.
Come back in the next round. I take Austin Eckler as my third running back.
I like it a lot.
I got Austin Eckler there. Then obviously the first quarterback goes off the board, and we get that run on QBs. Well, we already had not the run, but we then Mahomes go. As far as quarterback goes in this league, Benny, but the next round I took Duke Johnson. So now I got Zeke, Damien Williams, Austin Eckler, Duke Johnson, 4 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and T.Y. Hilton and Allen Robinson. Wide receivers getting kind of thin. I was able to get Matt Ryan. I think Sammy Watkins went a pick after that, and I thought to myself, wow, I probably should have hopped on Sammy Watkins instead of taking the quarterback there. I love Matt Ryan this year. Everybody knows that. I got my guy, Geronimo Allison, who when I shake it all down and put all my teams together, Benny, and I do ownership percentage, I believe Geronimo Allison will probably come out as the player that I have the most shares of this fantasy season, going into this fantasy season.
So the one thing I like about when you do the drafts over on draft.com is that they actually do all that stuff for you, where they break down your exposure and the guys that you have.
Who is it for you?
Well, Geronimo Allison is one of my highest, but you know who actually my highest owned guy is? Deebo Samuels.
How about that?
It's like 85%. Because, again, I'm getting a guy in like round 17. Yeah, I've been getting him round 16, round 17. ADP's been 180. And I don't know if you saw, I tagged you in on it last night.
That was crazy last night.
So he had another one of those 40-yard end-around runs. Like, this guy's going to be a big part of that offense, man. He's, in my opinion, he's the best wide receiver in San Francisco right now.
No, he can play. Coming out, you knew that the kid was a baller. He was discounted in the NFL draft. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I tend to look at like a history of the player and wide receivers from the state of South Carolina. They hit. You know what I'm saying? They hit to the tune of being the best wide receiver in the league. You look at Martavius Bryant, which is, the talent was there. DeAndre Hopkins, Alshon Jeffrey, the list goes on and on. It's a state that produces that player. Deebo Samuels falls right in line with that. I got my first share of Mark Andrews. Mandrews, you know what I'm saying?
Nice. I like it.
I think that's wide receiver 10. I don't know. And then, as soon as I draft him the next day, I hear, how great Mark Andrews is looking in training camp. What do you think about it?
Yeah, listen, to me, they drafted a whole bunch of tight ends hoping that one of them hit. Like, they took, what's his name, Hayden Hurst or something in the first round.
Yep.
Andrews was like a third-round pick. It looks to me like Andrews has emerged as the best of the bunch. And the thing I like the most about him is he's a big-time pass catcher, right? Like, this is a guy who, has good hands, like wide receiver kind of skills and just a big body. And, those are all good things, especially for the offense that they run. When you have a guy like Lamar Jackson who's rolling out a lot and they're going to have him, in space a lot and move in the pocket a lot, that's going to open up the tight end a lot of times for, whether it be like delayed, crosses or stuff like that, or even just, running down the seam in the middle of the field. I think Mark Andrews is in for a pretty good year. He's not going to have the volume that some of these other guys have, but I think he's going to make up for it with yards and touchdowns.
Not to mention the fact he's probably going to be the number one targeted guy in the offense as far as targets go. It's going to be a run-based system when it comes to passing the football. I think it would be hard to say that somebody gets more targets than Mark Andrews. I came back, Benny, and I did something that made me want to throw up and leave the draft room, but it was just nothing else there to do. At wide receiver 60, Benny, I took Devontae Parker.
Again, I have him. Wide receiver 60, I don't think you reached for him.
No, I did.
This is a guy that has a lot of upside if he ever gets it together. Now, the one thing that I liked at the beginning of like OTAs and all that I read is that the new coaching staff that they brought in basically said, we're starting this guy fresh from zero. With us, he has a clean slate. He's just got to go out there and prove to us that he can make plays. And a lot like you were talking about with Martavius Bryant, like nobody has ever questioned Parker's talent.
Yep.
You question whether he can stay healthy. You question whether he has the head to be, to be an NFL player and the makeup to work hard. But nobody's ever questioned the guy's talent. You got a big arm quarterback in Ryan Fitzpatrick who, basically made guys like Chris Godwin and reinvented Deshaun Jackson by just launching the ball down the field. And that's kind of what Parker is good at. He's big, he's tall, he's fast. He had all the measurables coming in from college, which is why people loved him so much. Maybe this is the coaching staff that can unlock his potential.
We'll see what happens with Devontae Parker. I'm not too optimistic about it, but obviously, like you said, the Ryan Fitzpatrick thing, as you know, is he's going to wing it. I took Kareem Hunt in this league also. Dallas Goedert's my tight end number 2. Chris Conley. Obviously, you know what I'm saying. Told you that thing. He could be a sleeper that comes into fruition with Nick Foles. And then my last pick kind of was the Cowboys defense, Jake Elliott and Randall Cobb. So those drafts right there come to an end. Pretty successful weekend, I think, at the Kings Classic.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about Chris Conley here for a minute because I've been reading a lot up on the Jaguars wide receiver core, trying to figure out what the hell is going on over there. Basically, it looks like Marquise Lee is not going to be ready to start the season. And from what I'm reading from a lot of other things, is like even when he is ready, he still might be like that good, to be honest with you. Like he may never be 100% at all at any point during the season.
Wow.
What they're saying is going to happen is Connolly and DJ Shark are going to be the 2 guys on the outside. And DJ Shark is a name that we haven't talked about. No one's
at all. Yep.
Going undrafted. But he's another guy that they say has been kind of showing out in practice on the outside. D.D. Westbrook's going to be the slot guy. Shark and Conley are going to be the guys on the outside. All 3 of these guys are available. I did another draft last night. All 3 of those guys were available after the 10th round. You could get all 3 of the Jaguars receivers after the 10th round. D.D. Westbrook being the one going around round 10. The other 2 guys are basically going undrafted.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's the thing about Conley is the thing I like about Conley, listen, I think when you shake it all down, Westbrook Westbrook had 100 targets last year from Blake Bortles. You know what I'm saying? People don't know that. You know what I mean?
And I think he missed a couple games too.
Yeah, Westbrook was very playable last year. And I think he'll be very playable again this year with a competent quarterback. The thing that what draws me to Conley is Nick Foles likes to throw the football down the field. And that's Chris Conley's game right there. So a dollar make you holler on Chris Conley is not going to hurt you.
It's the same game for DJ Shark, though. DJ Shark is a 96th percentile Sparks guy with 6'4", height, 195 pounds, and he ran a 4.340 at the Combine.
There you go. So he's got some weapons. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. So that's how we finished up in Canton, 2 14-team leagues. It was pretty tough. Still got the NFFC coming up. We'll probably hop in 1 or 2 more before we call it a draft season. And then we get down to fun for real. Don't forget fantasyguru.com. Draft Guide 2019 rocking and rolling right now with all the good content. But it's also taking you along through the full season. And if you play DFS, Elite Fantasy, got you covered. Sports betting, the whole thing, you got it right here at the Elite Sports family. Before we get into some baseball stuff, Benny, before this horrid 48 hours of travel started, as I was getting ready to get out of Canton, I was leaving the hotel, so I was like, packing up my shit and stuff like that, you know what I mean? So I was drunk, right, or hungover, so I didn't call downstairs and was like, hey, I need the shuttle in 15 minutes. I just kind of just showed up and was like, yo, I need the shuttle, you know what I'm saying? And dude was like, that's just me here, you know what I'm saying? He's like, let me see if I can get somebody, whatever. So he calls a dude, and sure enough, about 5 minutes later, see an older man come strolling down the hallway. So I look back for him again. He's strolling down the hallway. Mm-hmm. So he comes up to me, and the first thing he says is, you a Yankee fan? So you got a Yankee hat on. So I'm like, yeah, whatever. He was like, no, they're in town. I was like, yeah, I know they played the Indians last night. He was like, yeah, your boy Brett Gardner was wilding out again. I was like, yeah, whatever. Just making small talk. So we walk outside. He points across the street, Benny, and he says, do you know what's over there? I was like, no. He was like, that's a cemetery. I was like, okay. He was like, you know who's buried in that cemetery? And I'm like, no.
I saw this on your Instagram feed, yeah.
He says Thurman Munson. And I was like, what? He was like, yes, Thurman Munson is buried right across the street. I was like, stop playing with me. He was like, I'm dead serious. And sure enough, he was like, do you have time to go over there? I was like, you can go in there? He was like, sure, you can go in there, take a picture, do whatever. He drove me up the ramp, Benny. And sure enough, it was the grave of Thurman Munson. It blew my mind, Benny.
Yeah, I saw the number 15 on the grave too and all that. Yeah, that was pretty cool. I saw that on your Instagram post this week. That's pretty cool.
I had no clue. Do you know Thurman Munson was buried in Canton, Ohio?
I had no idea. Is that where he was from, or what's the story?
I think he's from somewhere in that area, but I think his family owns that cemetery.
Okay, that's pretty cool. You know what? And like you said, it was pretty cool that you can go. Like you had like a nice picture of like the great. Like as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh wow. Like I read the caption, I was like, wow, that made that was pretty cool. So I mean, again, I don't normally go and take pictures by graves on days other than Halloween, but that's actually a pretty cool thing to do, especially as a Yankee fan.
Exactly. So then obviously the trip starts, whatever the case, and it's horrible the past 48 hours. But then last night I was thinking about that Thurman Munson thing, and I was like, as bad as my 48 hours were of flying the past couple of days.
Yeah, better flight than Thurman Munson had. That's true.
It could have been worse. You know what I'm saying? Like, Benny, I legit got back to New York yesterday and had to fly to Allentown, Pennsylvania because we ran out of gas. And then sat for 2 hours in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Oh, Benny, when we finish this today, the email that United Airlines gets, Benny, is going to be legendary.
It's so funny to me how bad flying has become, right? Like when I was a kid, there were barely any flight delays. Like if your flight was delayed 15 minutes, it was like kind of a big deal. You got on the plane, you got like an actual it wasn't a good meal, but it was like at least an edible meal and stuff like that.
When I was a little boy, we used to go to different places. I had some great meals on airplanes. Now you get like his bag of peanuts.
Yeah, like they give you like a box and you're like, oh man, I wonder what's in it. You open it up, it's like a little sliver of cracker and like a little piece of cheese. And like, I'm like, man, I ain't eating any of this stuff. And then there's like a little pack of gummy bears that has like 8 gummy bears in it. It's like the best part of the meal over there.
And I got a good homegirl of mine as a flight attendant, and whenever she's in town, she has a layover. I'll go hang out with her. You know what I'm saying? And what she does is, I don't think nobody knows who she is, and they're not gonna tell. Like when the fight is over, she'd be like, so it'd be like a 6-pack of Heineken waiting for me. You know what I'm saying?
Nice.
So good times was had. Baseball wise, Benny, I wasn't able to keep up over the weekend, but what do we got going on? We got some picks for the night.
Not a lot that I'm really in love with. Honestly, my favorite bet tonight is probably Steven Strasburg and the Washington Nationals. That offense has just been really hot. I'm not doing it because I love Strasburg. I'm actually doing it more because I want to bet against Chris Archer of the Pittsburgh Pirates. But minus 160 on Strasburg and the Nationals is probably the only thing I really like tonight.
All right, there you go, right there. Big piece of chicken. I found this out yesterday. I got to give big piece of chicken to my man Charles Griffin. A very good friend of mine. We started at the United States Department of Energy together. We was in the same training class, you know what I'm saying? After I had left DOE and moved into my broadcast career, me and him still hung out and kept close and stuff like that. Maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, he had just randomly was having stomach pains. He played college football for UAB. As a matter of fact, he was roommates with Roddy White, you know what I'm saying? He was the guy that told me. Yeah, years ago, he told me about Julio Jones. He was like, it's this kid coming up in Alabama named Julio Jones. Just an all-around great athlete. He was like a great baseball player, you know what I'm saying? Never went pro or anything like that, you know what I'm saying? Got to work with him. I remember when the stomach thing happened, he was like, his coaches always told him it's being hurt and it's being injured. And he said his stomach felt like he was injured. He went to the hospital and he had stage 4 colon cancer at 34 years old. He became like the national spokesperson for colon cancer. And somebody texted me yesterday, let me know he was passed away. It's my man, Charles Griffin. He gets a big piece of chicken, him and his 3 young daughters and his wife, you know what I'm saying? All very cool people. So what we got, Benny?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to give mine to Deebo Samuels. If you saw the way he played yesterday, I mean, Corey and I have been singing this kid's praise for about the last month or so. I don't think you're still going to be able to get him at ADP 180 from now on going forward.
Yeah, we'll jump up this weekend.
Yeah, but hopefully you got some shares stashed away already. If you went running back heavy like I've been doing early in the draft and kind of waiting and taking some shots on some of these wide receivers later on in the draft, this is one of those guys that if you hit on him and he becomes a wide receiver 3 for you that you got in round 15, 16, 17 of a draft, you're going to have some pretty strong teams if he keeps playing like he's been playing in the preseason.
There you go right there for my main man, Benny. I'm Corey Parson, the fantasy executive to Opening Line. Back in business, but we are out for the day.